Hotel room rates across the country have shot up.
The shift has been from that occasion-based, milestone-based to I deserve a break just because it's a Saturday kind of thing.
That's a nice tip for savvy travelers, right? Go and book in the off season.
Yeah, book in the off season. Even look at the days of the week, because when you're looking at revenue, from a revenue management perspective, even your days of the week matter, length of stay matters. So,
if you had to give me a breakup of how a typical hotel runs, what are the costs involved? How do you break even? As a business, how does it work?
A lot of it comes down to your initial investment, and it's that fine-tuning in terms of finding balance between the capital deployed and eventually how much someone is willing to pay for that experience.
Can you tell us a bit about your relationship with money?
So I suppose I've over time made that shift from money being a source of security and a source of identity, more to it being a way of almost like a tool which gives me the freedom.
Hello and welcome to Let's Mint Money. I'm your host Neil Borate. In this show, we talk about how acclaimed business leaders approach money. The show is brought to you in association with Waterfield Advisors, and my guest today, Amruda Nair, is a third-generation entrepreneur. She belongs to the illustrious Leela family, and she herself has launched the Araiya Group of Hotels. Today, we'll talk about her approach to hospitality, to her investments, and much more. Welcome, Amruda. So, Amruda, can you tell us a bit about growing up and how that shaped your career in hospitality?
So growing up at the Leela, I suppose hospitality was just a part of our way of life. But I think it also shaped our perspective in terms of, what we wanted to do and in the environment that we wanted to spend our time. I think it shaped me in terms of not just from a wealth creation perspective, but also, in terms of financial, cultural, social credit as well, So I think it's a more rounded. So I think hospitality gives you multiple perspectives. It's a great learning place. And I think the reason I'm in hospitality today is because it's all I've ever known.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't think of doing something else.
Yeah. And how was it different, let's say 20 years ago? Has it taken off, would you say, in the last, let's say 5 or 10 years?
Well, I certainly think that the domestic demand has certainly changed dramatically. And I think what we're trying to do is get that balance back where we still have the foreign tourists coming in a healthy way. And we'd like to see that growth continue. But I think it's flipped from my grandfather's time, when we launched the brand 40 years ago to now. And I think it's healthy. I think it's also reflective of, I think, Indians' perspectives of how they see India as a destination in itself.
Yeah.
And perhaps also to a certain extent, I feel like our Indian guests are a little bit more sure of themselves and what they want to do with their time and how they identify themselves and then the brands they want to associate with. So I think it's all coming together very beautifully, and you're seeing that more dramatically in our industry.
Right. Could you map your career for us before Araiya and now?
Sure. So I guess the sort of foundation was laid at the dining table in a lot of ways because I'm third generation, so we talk shop all the time. It's what we live and breathe. And then once I went away for hotel school first in the Netherlands, which gave me a great basis for actually working in the environment. So I think the European standards for service and learning from the ground up was a great foundation. I went to Cornell for my master's, so the same university that both parents, my mom and dad both went to the hotel school at Cornell as well. So went to Cornell for my master's, and the plan originally was to stay in the US. So I was working with the Mandarin Oriental. The property had just the one in New York had just opened across from Trump's project at Central Park. So it was a great property to be associated with.
What year was this?
And so this would have been 2005, 6. And so I just graduated. So it was a great time to be in New York City. But the real action was really in Asia. So I chose to actually move and took up my first job out of college, I suppose, was as an analyst. Working in investment sales, based out of the JLL office in Singapore. But the resort market was really hot those years. And so I got to work on hotel sale deals in Japan, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. We did a lot of valuation work in Indonesia. So I think that sort of gave me a great basis because I was working on, literally got to see properties from a very different investment perspective. And then eventually switched sides, and then worked as an owner's rep for LIM, which is an investment fund that owned assets in Shanghai, Beijing, and Singapore. So very different again, because every month I had to produce a report which said, this is the EBITDA, and is this a good time to sell or not? So very different perspective to hospitality and hotel assets. I came back to join the family business in 2010. We'd gone from 900 rooms to 2,200 keys in that very short span. So it was a great opportunity to work with my grandfather and father as the brand was growing. And I came into an asset management role, primarily because finally as a group we could look at centralizing things, looking at putting an MIS process in place.
Could you explain that a bit more to our viewers?
Sure. Yeah. So I think my specific role there was to look at capex expenditure on a asset basis, but also look at MIS and operational finance. So establish what sort of the group benchmarks were. I think as an analyst, the first thing I learned at JLL was that there's nothing like more or less. It has to be more than or less than, and there always has to be a benchmark. So whether it's a historic or a market benchmark. So I think just having that discipline in terms of how to look at numbers came from that background. I then decided to move to the Middle East. So I had a joint venture with a Qatari partner, and we set up a brand called Ayana. And for me, that was where I learned scale. So the largest property we ran was a 611 key hotel in Mecca. And that's beautiful from a numbers perspective because you really understand flow throughs.
If I may, it sounds like a silly question, but
yes.
why keys and why not rooms? Why is that terminology?
Okay. So I guess you sell it as a key. So you could have a 3-bedroom suite that would still sell as 1 key.
I see.
And so typically when you look at it from an investment perspective on a per key basis. And I guess when you're looking at your metrics, you look at it because it's one sale, essentially. So and so I think the Middle East was a great learning because it helped me understand scale and that beauty of flow throughs. And I think with coming back to India now and playing in the boutique space is the complete opposite. Because and it's harder work, to be honest. I think the 6-room property we're running now is harder to run than 611 rooms because I think there's so much attention that goes into detail there. And it's more about what you can do differently than bringing in the standards and the consistency. So completely different approach.
So Amruda, can you give me, if you had to give me a breakup of how a typical hotel runs, what are the costs involved? How do you break even? As a business, how does it work?
I mean, typically, and with Araiya, I think because I come from an owner's background, a lot of first-time owners like working with us because we're able to, work with them on what to build and also what not to build. And I think a lot of it comes down to your initial investment, and it's that fine-tuning in terms of finding balance between the capital deployed and eventually how much someone is willing to pay for that experience. So we spend a lot of time telling people what not to build, so that we can get the right size of room, the right fit out where it warrants the eventual position and price that we want to get for that product. So I think a lot of our initial efforts go into the technical services side, where we're looking at revenue generation spaces versus non-revenue generation.
So restaurants, for example.
So restaurants would still be revenue generation, but you relook at how much space is allocated to corridors which don't generate, or public areas that don't generate revenues. But you still want to have that one grand lobby experience, because your welcome experience is actually the peak of that whole arrival. From a happiness quotient perspective,
first impressions.
It's the first, and that's what people remember, that emotion that they felt when they arrived. So I think it's finding a balance between where you're deploying capital in a way that's meaningful to the guest and not what you would want as an owner. From a business perspective, you're typically looking at a 7 to 10 year overall sort of payback cycle, but usually between a year and two is where you look at cash break even. And typically, because our fixed costs are fairly high, a lot of it goes in is payroll. And given how seasonal our businesses are, tends to be.
Could you break down these two concepts? So cash break even and the 7 to 10 year period that you mentioned.
So the 7 to 10 year period is how long it would typically take for you to get all your initial capital back. Wherein when we're looking at cash break even, what we're looking at is your base occupancy level at which you can cover your fixed costs.
Right.
In hospitality, it tends to be quite high because payroll, especially when you're doing leisure properties where there is seasonality, then payroll, HLP becomes a big part of your cost structure and your stack. So what we typically look at is that 25 to 35% break-even occupancy, so that then you don't have negative cash flow months. But the good thing, I think, we were talking about the domestic business earlier, but that's dramatically changed because now, even in the off-season, your weekend business is still coming in. Or you're getting long stay business that's staying with you, on a staycation. So I think those elements have changed the game a little bit, and so that we're able to get a base business going even in leisure destinations now. Traditionally, you would even in Europe they still do it. They shut shop for 3 or 4 months, which we don't need to do in India anymore.
What is your target consumer segment? Because one of the post-pandemic trends in India has been massive premiumization. Hotel room rates across the country have shot up to an extent where other countries have become cheaper. Southeast Asia has become cheaper. So have you noticed that massively?
So I think I look at things differently because, again, when you're benchmarking in terms of what we're able to offer here in India, in the luxury segment, if you took that same product and level of service and put that in the center of Paris, you'd be paying 3 times. And Indians are paying 3 times that amount. So I think, yes, room rates have gone up. But I think in terms of value for money, there's a lot more consciousness of also what you're getting in other countries versus what we get in India. So and a greater appreciation for that. So I think while other countries are perhaps priced cheaper, I think there's a value that's now being appreciated that wasn't necessarily before.
Right. But for you specifically, what is that sort of range that you look for in terms of traveler that?
So I think it depends. I mean, the big change you're seeing is in the younger audiences that are now spending almost 45% of their disposable income on travel, and so I think the shift has been from that occasion-based, milestone-based to I deserve a break just because it's a Saturday kind of thing.
Right.
And so I think the audience has widened because I think you could have someone come to you who's sort of said, oh, instead of saving, I'm going to use this to to indulge in an experience because I feel like I'll get much more bang for my buck from that stay than I would with that wealth sitting in the bank. So I think the audience has gotten much broader, and I don't think you can really segment it anymore. To say, oh, I'm only going to cater to, the wealthy families, and it's no longer cookie cutter model where you're saying that it's going to be a couple with their two kids who come in. A big part of my business and we're in remote locations are single people who've come together as a group because they share the same interest, and that could be going out into nature, could be bird watching, could be lots of other things, and they've come together and they've decided to to experience it as a community that they've built. So I think you can't really segment anymore. And also I think the range in terms of the audience also has widened. So you can't really say, oh, within that demographic, I'm only going to cater to someone in this particular income bracket, because I think the way people are using their disposable income has changed.
But if I just had to put a room rent range to
Yes.
it, would that be in the 7 to 10K or?
So we're in the upscale space, and that goes into luxury. But for example, in Himachal, at Araiya Palampur, we're trading at an average year around about 15,000 rupees. But then that goes, it fluctuates between season and off season. And so I think what you mentioned, I think, is within the range.
And how much is the fluctuation between on and off as a percentage?
Depends completely on whether there is some. So, for example, in Gir, where we've just opened this summer, we're actually we've signed 4 hotels already in year 1. Now that wouldn't normally be something that we'd build in to our model, but we realized that's a great way to offset the season when the park is closed, or in the monsoon where not all of the park is available. So I think it depends on the location, but I think to a great extent it's about a 30%.
So that's a nice tip for savvy travelers, right? Go and book in the off season.
Yep, book in the off season. Even look at the days of the week, because when you're looking at revenue, from a revenue management perspective, even your days of the week matter, length of stay matters. So, so you'd get a better rate if you stayed longer, because from a hotel's perspective, they'd rather have the one customer acquisition cost for 3 nights, split into 3, rather than have a new customer check in every day.
Yeah. Just to round off the piece on hospitality and travel.
Sure.
There's a lot of credit card communities in India now.
Sure.
And lots of cards have tie-ups with hotel chains, and makes for a great partnership. Are you looking at that as well?
So I think a lot of travelers are quite switched on, and I mean, even now when you're hearing people saying, "Oh, I'm switching to this card because it's 5x at the moment," in terms of reward points. So I think from so we do have partnerships, but I think from a loyalty program perspective, what we try and do is reward loyalty in terms of experiences again. So it's not as transactional. I think and a lot of hotel brands are switching to this model only because I think eventually when you look at point systems, it sits as a liability on the brand's books. I mean, Hilton Honors is a whole separate business for them.
Right.
So I think the way we are approaching loyalty is more from a recognition and rewards perspective. So, and we're part of the discovery program. So an Araiya guest will get the same recognition as they would if they went to a Leela or an Andara, because we all share discovery as a common GHA distribution system. So what our loyalty system does is that it helps us track preferences. It helps us, even customize that welcome amenity or the turn down to what they know is your preferred, preference in terms of a drink or a food item. So I think the idea is to look at it more from a recognition perspective and reward loyalty.
Okay.
So less transactional.
Fair. Now, can you tell us a bit about your relationship with money?
So I suppose I've over time made that shift from money being a source of security and a source of identity, more to it being a way of almost like a tool, which gives me the freedom to decide, what I want to invest in, whether it gives me the freedom to even decide, be creative, but within it, to decide what business I want to be in, who I want to work with. I think so. I see money as a tool that gives me that freedom that allows me to do that.
As an entrepreneur, though, you have investments to make, you have expansion to fund. Does that change your outlook? Do you have to draw down on places that you would not have earlier used?
So I think entrepreneurs are generally more optimistic and they see things from a different perspective. I think my perspective towards investments is different, and I think I see, especially when it comes to running the family office and managing money on behalf of my family. I think I'm more moderate in terms of my risk taking, but I think what as an entrepreneur, you learn how to plan for sort of the downside, but also then leave room for growth. And I think that's the general approach that I would like to take.
Okay. Beyond your business, how do you look at your investments? How do you plan for them?
So I think from a very similar approach, I think I look at it more as a stewardship in terms of how we plan our investments. I think we started as a family office, we started small, made all our mistakes early, and then as we got comfortable,
when did you start?
For me personally, it would have been in my 30s, where I'd be working with my parents to sort of create a family office structure. I think I'm a big believer in bringing advisors in, both from a wealth management perspective, but even in terms of structuring, in terms of governance, structures, succession planning. I think I come from a services business, so I believe that you should bring professionals in to give you the right advice.
Right.
And so I think I think it's with most families you have a liquidity event, and then you have a certain amount that you can invest in, and then you make certain choices, and then the next time around you've learned over time to ask about costs, to ask the right questions in terms of risk. So I guess we started the more traditional way in with real estate and fixed income, slowly moved into to equity, and I think now we're more comfortable with alternatives and private equity. But I think it's a learning curve, and I think the more mistakes we made, we learned how to ask the right questions, and I suppose that's how. And I think it's a whole other education process, right? So I think you can run your business and look at money a certain way, but I think when you're looking at it from a family office wealth management perspective, it's not really about returns. You're really looking at preservation and continuity. So I think the perspective changes.
Okay. So within your portfolio, what is the rough asset allocation? Equity, debt, alternates?
I would say 50-50 is where we started, and then we've sort of slowly brought in the alternatives to about 10%.
And within alternates, it's mostly private equity, or?
So private equity is very, very new, only because I don't think we're that comfortable taking too much risk on. From a family office perspective, what we did was come up with an investment plan, and we've stayed pretty close to that. So I think it's only as and when fresh funds were available that we said, okay, do we want to now bring in some element of risk in, and then looked at private equity, completely from an opportunity base. I don't think it was as planned. So I think we give ourselves that 10 to 15% sort of bandwidth where we're being a little bit more creative and treat it almost like a learning experience. But otherwise, our outlook in terms of a family office is fairly structured.
Right. So in the alternatives bit, is it strategic that you invest in companies which are related to hospitality, where you have?
No, so completely different, only because it gives us that diversity then, because we already have exposure to real estate in a family business, and then so the idea would be to look at not even necessarily services business. So it could be manufacturing, could be something completely different that's unrelated, just to bring that diversification in.
But I guess the challenge is to understand those businesses, right?
So, which is great because then it's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So for us also, like I said, we just learn how to ask the right questions.
Yeah. On the equity side, how do you invest? Mutual funds, PMS?
Primarily
Yeah.
through PMS and mutual funds. And I think what we've done is very consciously worked with our advisors. So I think money becomes a very emotional subject, and then what you want to invest in because of the flavor of the month in terms of conversations that you're hearing. So I think what bringing structure to it and working with advisors has helped us take that emotion out, and be I think just more black and white about whether it fits, if it fits or it doesn't. I think it's allowed us to just bring in that clarity.
Yeah. And it's the same on the debt side, mostly mutual funds.
So yeah, so on the debt side, I think we started very debt heavy, and then over time we realized that there's more risk with the debt that we were holding than on the equity front. So even that was a learning. And so similar structures. I think eventually what we did was it's going back to what the original vision was from an investment plan perspective, and then staying true to that, and not bringing in too many sort of personal nuances and interests into the mix.
Yeah. Tell us about your advisors. What do you look for in a good advisor, and also in terms of how do you evaluate them? Can you give us some?
So first and foremost, patience, because I think for us it was a big learning journey. So I think being able to sort of handhold us through understanding instruments and structures, and then eventually transparency when it comes to costs, reporting, allowing us to have access to data, so that at any given time on a real time basis we know where things stand. So I think it comes with all services businesses, it comes back down to just trust and responsiveness.
Yeah. And also, I guess, do you pay attention to how they are rewarded? Is it commissions? Is it fees? Is it important?
So we've always preferred to go through the advisory route, which is a flat fee that which is as a percentage of the portfolio size. Only because I think it then just brings transparency into the system. And the minute you start working with distributors and there's costs that you don't understand, and I think we'd rather pay for the fee. And I think with all services business, you get what you pay for, and I think we understand that, and so it's very clear that we want the advice and want to work with people who will push back and say, oh, I don't think this is right for you.
On succession planning,
yes,
have you guys put a model into place?
But I think my parents have been fairly forward thinking in terms of putting in governance structures, having their wills in place, open wills, so everyone's very clear about our inheritance. So I think again we worked with advisors on the different structures, and then came. So I think the one good thing has been that it's all been thought through and through generations. So I think the approach to it was fairly structured again.
Any advice for first-gen entrepreneurs, especially women?
So first-gen entrepreneurs, I think most. So I don't know if you can call me a true first-gen, because I think my family's been in this business 3 generations. So I think there's always this identity crisis that how much of it is really my own, and so I think to not fight that and constantly and realize that you can still honor the legacy that you've sort of inherited in terms of values, and then create use that as a foundation to sort of create your own. So I think my advice would be to use those roots not really as an anchor, but more like a compass in terms of where you want to take that forward.
All right, Amruda, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.